Good afternoon. This is the regular board meeting of September 1, 2022. The time is now 4:05 p.m. Please call the roll.
President Herrera,
Here.
Vice President Chavez. Here. Clerk Cortese. Here. Member Lay. On our way, Member Joe.
Here.
Again, welcome to the board meeting. Are there any members of the public who would like to provide public comment to the board on a closed session agenda item at this time?
We have no public comment submissions.
Okay, and no members in the audience indicating to speak. The board will now recess to closed session. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the board on September 1, 2022. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. So, again, welcome to the meeting, and members of the public, please submit your public comment as follows. You may raise your virtual hand in Zoom to request to speak and offer comment in real time. In-person public commentators will be allowed entry 3 speakers at a time in the boardroom. Upon conclusion of a speaker's public comment on the agenda item, the speaker must exit the boardroom. You may also submit your public comment online by accessing the form on the district's homepage at ESUHSD.org or the link on the agenda. Please reference the agenda item number in your written comment and limit your written comments to no more than 1,000 characters in length. Public comments submitted online will be read into the record. Please note that all meetings are recorded. All regular and special meetings of the Board of Trustees and board study sessions are streamed live on meeting nights and are also available for viewing the day after the meeting by accessing the district's YouTube channel listed on the district's webpage at esuhsd.org under the quick links section. The board is not able to respond to items that are not on the agenda or to any personnel related issues. Your comment will be read into the record and will be directed to the superintendent and/or the appropriate staff member for response. Interpretation of this meeting in Spanish and Vietnamese can be heard by accessing the link and following the instructions shown on the agenda or the district's website. Again, welcome. We're going to proceed with our meeting. And that's item 5 on the agenda, adoption of the agenda. Basically, this is an opportunity to state any changes to the published agenda. Otherwise, we proceed with the agenda as published. Hearing none, we're going to continue. Glenn, you had a change, I think, but that can also be handled under.
We'll handle that at 8.01.
Under 8.1, yeah. Item 6, we have no board special recognitions today. Item 7, we do not have a student governing board representative.
Board president, we don't, but we sure will. And I got to tell you, we had our first meeting with the student governing board, and it is a great group of students that is looking to recruit with the openings. And we look to have our representative at the next meeting or in October.
Great, thank you. Item 8.01, and this is operational items for discussion and or action. And 801 is where we can request to change any order of discussion.
We're asking that we move item 12.01 to follow 8.03.
12.01 is a discussion regarding educational services initiatives and priorities for this school year by Associate Superintendent Teresa Marquis. So item 12.01 would be now coming after which item?
8.03.
After 8.03 on the agenda. We pulled that out of item at that point. Pulled that out of order. If there's no other requests, we're going to proceed with item 8.02 on the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee Bond Annual Report, Bond Program Annual Report.
We're gonna give Barry a moment to breathe here as they just walked in from the parking lot right on time, like amazing, and have a feel. You're fine. Well, come on up.
Well, you know, while you're having a moment to breathe, Mr. Superintendent, I wonder if would you please introduce our new Associate Superintendent for Business, just to officially welcome her from the board. And Mr. Superintendent.
Sure. We welcome to the team, and I've got to say, this is the first time I'm looking out here with pride and a sense of community that we have in front of us a full administrative team for the first time in over a year, and completing the team and really bringing a lot of years of experience and a true desire to be in Eastside and be about the work of our building equitable communities so that our students could be full participants, not only in their schools, but in this valley in the future, is Ms. Michelle Huntoon joining us as the Associate Superintendent of Business Services. Welcome.
And, you have a microphone. Why don't you just give us a word?
I just want to say that I'm honored to be here to serve the board, superintendent, staff, students. So I'm very happy. This is my second week. I'm just rounding my full second week, and it's been very busy, but it's been very fulfilling. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Schimmel. Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome to the family. You'll be great here.
So item 8.02 is the bond program annual report for measures GEI, technology. Is that technology I or one? Technology I and Z. Quite a few bond programs that we have here in the school district. So welcome again, and the report will be made. State your name for the record, please. Your microphone.
Barry Schimmel, Chair of this year's Bond Oversight Committee. And thank you very much, Mr. President. I know that the bond program is very important because when your new assistant superintendent came to the district last week, she called me, and we've known each other for years and wanted to brief me and welcome me. So the purpose of tonight's report is to share with the board our annual report. And I think the board can be very proud of the Bond Oversight Committee. 10 years ago, I would call it affectionately a sit and get committee. The members were there, staff presented, we got up and we left. And that kind of has changed. The committee is very active. It asks great questions, knows what its role is and what its role is not. And we are very, very fortunate. In the past, we've had a difficult time getting members. If you were breathing, you could be a member. This last go around, we actually had more members than we had seats. And we did an interview process, and Board Member Doe and Board Member Lay were presented with us. And we started something called an associate member so that other people could kind of learn and watch. And then maybe when it came time for a vacancy, they would be interested. The superintendent's been extremely supportive of training. And when our vice chair, Melissa Gott, is in the back, bringing up an idea to have us attend a Zoom conference, it created a lot of enthusiasm, and the superintendent paid for the registration. So all the board members are welcome to attend, as well as all the committee members. And I believe it's Saturday, October 15th by Zoom at 9 o'clock, and we'll get you a link. So what I'm going to share with you now, and I think we can do it going through the slides, is what is in the report. Now, I know the board's read that, so I'm going to go pretty quickly. And this is more for the community of what to look for, because we are the custodians of their money. And our goal is to make sure once the board's chosen what the products and projects are, then we need to make sure it's been done. And particular credit goes to Patrick Trainer and to Chris Roberts. They actually wrote the report, and Chris has some great technical skills, and we did it kind of on the meeting over at Starbucks to do all of the editing. So the first page tells the community who is on the team of this year's committee. And it would be last year's committee because the report is from ended in 22 and started July 1. And that talks about our projects that we took a look at and all the activities of the committee and who the committee members were, because they're a little different this year. You know, if we can go to page 3, please. This talks about how much bond funds do we have and where do they come from? And the next page. And this talks about how we should get involved as a community. And the thing I'm most proud of, living in the district for over 20 years and being a former school teacher in the elementary district, that our schools are looking better and better all the time. Candidly, when I was a little kid growing up here, you weren't allowed to go to the east side. That has changed so dramatically in terms of the ability for safety for students and the kinds of buildings we have built. And the next page, please. And that describes all of our bond measures, and a real credit to our community. They didn't just pass one bond. They've been continually passing bonds because they're a smart community and they understand it's kind of like your house. When you have our youngest high school of Evergreen being 20 plus years old, and some of our high schools approaching 60, things don't last forever. Hot water heaters, tile roofs, those kinds of things, and they need to be replaced to maintain the quality. And this district has done that through the leadership of the board. And the next page. And these are some of our fiscal compliance statements that we must take a look at. And also the district's required to have an outside auditor, both financially and performance-wise. And your auditors have also looked at that. So there's kind of 3 checks of what we need to take a look at. And the next slide, number 8, there shows a graph and numbers of where the money's spent so people can see it using both modalities, pictorially and graphically. And page 9. Again, where are the different bond member measures? We started our technology bond a few years ago, and that's a refreshing. And that's part of our attempt to treat young people like adults. It's completely changed in the last 10 years, and particularly since COVID, that independent learners are part of what education's about. And we have reached out and treated our young people like adults. So the next page, on page 9, gives you some ideas of what some of the projects look like with technology. And page 17 or 11, excuse me, distance learning support. We can now have our students learn and they don't have to physically be in the building. And that is treating young people like adults. They get not only the equipment, but the access. We began taking a look at construction projects, and Julio Lucas has a real ability to work with staff and people inside, but also look outside to see what other districts are doing. An example of that would be our student unions. They don't look like rows and benches anymore. They look like college student unions where you have little gathering places and people can have a cup of coffee and interact. They have a copy machine there if you need to make a copy. They have plug-in to charge your computer. It's treating young people like adults, and they respond acting like adults. The next slide, please. And here's some more construction projects that we've gone through. And the next slide, we've moved to conserve water to artificial turfs at our schools, which has reduced our energy bill. And while artificial turf does need some maintenance, at the rate water is going up in our valley, we're ahead of the curve. Next slide. We also take care of adults, as you know, and have an adult program, and have also invested money, not just in the high school levels, but all the support facilities that our district has. And next, we call this building a better community. I mentioned it not to be negative, but we didn't have the greatest reputation for a while. And that has changed dramatically as you drive by Andrew Hill High School. Every day, one of the most busiest intersections, you see the success that students are doing. Trang Vo won the Merit Scholarship. Sam Padilla did this. And it is definitely changing the image. As you go by that school and you look at the garden and the outdoor learning experiences, people go, I want to take a look inside. That looks pretty interesting. That changes our image and increases our viability. And all of our high schools have something. And the next slide. We also, a lot of people still don't understand what a bond is, how it gets paid for. We gave examples in our report of how many cents on your tax bill. And when you go to East Side, and particularly if you're on the East Side, you not only have a high school district you pay for an elementary district. So I know on my own personal tax bill, I think there's about 7 or 8 line items, but that's what's making the school district so strong. So we answered some frequently asked questions about what is a bond, who pays for it, who monitors. And the next slide, please. That's the last one. Okay, so I would like to, in closing, thank one special person. And you as a board need to know this. Without New Win, none of this would get done. And New is back there. And as I've served as chair, she works with Melissa and I, and her attention to detail and the pride of what she does in her work, including the board may be a little early tonight, Barry. Can you show up at 6:30 instead of 6:45? Was the phone call I got a few minutes before 6. She's just on top of stuff, and she can get things done, always with a smile. And sometimes I know, being a school person, that's a lot of work, and maybe we don't need to do it. And she's not a problem, Barry. We'll get it done. And that's the kind of employees you have. So I stand ready for questions, and if I can't answer them, Melissa will.
Thank you for your report and the spirit in which you bring it. I can really feel that there's a commitment there to stand for the community with citizen oversight. The full report is available to anyone who wants to read it. They can just request it and it'll be made available. I want to acknowledge staff the way you did too, because it makes all the difference when you have staff that is really dedicated to providing, the kind of service and support that is needed in something like this. So thank you for the work there. Before we go to questions, Mary Gillen, you said there's a comment from Mr. Julio Pardo.
Yes, there is.
Okay, why don't, if you can just step aside for a moment.
Sure.
And I'm gonna, is it online?
Yes.
Oh, you don't need to step away. He's not, go ahead and.
Public comment online from CSEA President Julio Pardo. I appreciate the work put in by the committee. The presentation is easily understood. However, I would like to see a presentation from whoever is responsible on the cost of the bond issuances. How much has been paid out for borrowing this money since 2002? Was not the first bond issued in the 1990s? If so, how much has the total payback been since then? Could we get a breakdown for the individual payments for each bond measure? Or is there somewhere I can find the answers to these questions already? Thank you for your time. Julio Pardo, President, Chapter 187, East Foothills CSEA.
We can get answers to those questions. It's not the bond oversight committee, but I'm sure the assistant superintendent and superintendent staff knows your person that sells your bond and can put that report together or have them do that to answer that question.
Yeah, from a policy perspective, totally legitimate question and data to seek. It would need to be complete with one column showing expense, what we paid, the other column showing what we've accomplished, what it brought. Because if you just focus on expense, it kind of leaves you out of context with what has been accomplished over the various bond programs. And Mr. Pardo is correct. The first bond measure was approved in 1990, I believe. It was called Measure A at the time. There've been a subsequent Measure A. And the voters have just been completely supportive over the years in approving additional bond programs. But I think his question has more to do with 2000 onwards. So thank you, Mr. Pardo. And if there's no other question, members of the board, comments or questions?
If I may.
Yeah,
I-
Mr. Go.
Dr. Schimmel, it's a great pleasure to see you again.
Thank you.
As you know, CBOC is one of my favorite committees and probably I attend so many of your meetings. But I also want to take the moment to thank not only your service, but also the quality and the quantity number of amazing caliber of the people you have at the CBOC. And
So when you say CBOC for the listening audience, you
yes,
mean,
yes, I have always called it CBOC, but maybe
you mean the Citizen Bond
Citizen
Oversight
Bond
Committee.
Oversight Committee. Thank you. And so you have an enormous amount of experience, and I appreciate you taking the time to educate me when I first elected as a board member. And of course, the Honorable Melissa Lopez, excuse me, who's also now elected herself. And so I'm so glad that we have such amazing caliber of our people. And of course, because I attend so many meetings, I share your perspective about New Win. She's always on top of things. She's very quick and she's very responsive. So thank you for you and of course for the staff, or not just you, but all the other members of the bond program. So thank you.
Thank
Member
you.
Cortez.
Thank you so much to our chair and vice chair of the CBOC Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for your service. It's I've always felt like we had a very professional and organized group, and appreciate your leadership. I want to echo to my board colleagues your invitation to the conference on October 15th, I think it is. I've been engaging with a very active member of our community who's been inquiring about the Citizen Bond Oversight Committees in general, and I'm realizing like I have a lot to learn there. And they're offering this conference for 15 people for $100. Like that is a deal of a century. So
That's why when he thanked me for my generosity, I was a little bit like, not that
Right?
generous.
no brainer.
The opposite.
Yeah, so I plan on attending. It's virtual, so it's easy. Probably don't even need to get out of your jammies on Saturday morning, but I'm planning on going because I would really like to learn more about what it is you do and how we, what those best practices are. And I'm sure that we are engaging in all of that ourselves. But good to know.
Kind of an
firsthand.
inside joke. Melissa's actually found that, and we sent Melissa several years ago in person with one of our chairs. So I sent a note to Superintendent Vanderzee that could we send about 5 people? And I misread the $100 was for 15. So I asked them for 500. And then Melissa sent me a note, Barry, read a little more carefully. It's for 15. So the superintendent got a note back. It's only going to cost you $100. And he can count on one hand when somebody is asked for money, and then it comes back lower.
That was great.
Yes, member Lay.
Yes, I also want to echo my board colleagues that I appreciate all of the time that I know about, the Citizen Science Committee. And I know there's a lot of works behind the scene as well as staff. So I really treasure and really appreciate, the public service that all of you have been putting to this committee. And I know that we keep moving and we keep introduce it to the community, as well as we recruit more members to come in and, to continue the work. And I know that both of you, Dr. Shimro and as well Melissa, has done just a good job. I'm looking forward to continue the partnership, and hopefully that we'll be able to present it to the communities when they come back and they see all of this beautiful building, and they know that we have very good track record, so they can vote it for the next bond measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Chavez.
Chavez. That's my last name. I have to echo my appreciation for both of you and the whole committee. I remember before I became a board member, Melissa, we were at, what is it, La Boulanger in Evergreen, coming up with this report. And so I think you were part of the team then as well, that just really supported a lot of the work that went into that, but also hours. Y'all spent hours in this, right? And when we come up with a product like this, that is really clear on how we're making our investments, I know that this is supporting and building the credibility of our work, of our investments. And also, I really appreciate it how easy it is to read where our investments are. So people can clearly go on sites and see how we're using our money. A question I have is, where can we access this report so that the community knows?
I believe it's online and there are extra copies. One of the things, some of the members are involved in other organizations like the Rotary or Chamber of Commerce or something. And we've in the past gotten extra copies if they've been a speaker at one of those groups at one of their meetings to bring those. And we write it to let the community know what we're doing. And I have a belief that part of the committee's role is to share that with the community so we can continue to pass bonds,
Yes.
because it's sort of like painting the bridge. By the time we get done with something, 20 years are by and we need to go back and do it again.
Yep, 100%. And I mean, we got November a few months from now. And so I'd be happy to also share that out if it could be sent to me. So in the board, I would say, so that we could also extend it and
So when you say that it's online, you mean on the district's website?
Yes, I believe it's on the district website. Am I correct? Thank you. The boss said yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For your report and for all the work that you and the committee are doing and staff.
It's our pleasure. It's part of our community and I want those folks to help take care of me as I get older.
Okay,
There you go.
thank you.
Thanks to the members of the committee that are here tonight. Let's give them some love. We were at a college recently where there were students from different districts, and we walked into a student union and I heard a family go, "Oh, wow, look at this." And our student said, "Yeah, it's like my high school." They were at a college student union. And when the other family was like, "Look at this," our student said, "Hey, it's like my high school." And that's a credit to the bond program, the oversight committee, but also the members of our community who have truly invested in our students and in our community so that we can build first-class facilities in places that are the gems and the jewels of their community that they're proud to walk into, that contribute to a sense of I'm going places and I'm worth this. And that when I go to the next level of my education, I already feel like I belong because I've experienced spaces like this. The voters in our community in the past have been very generous and very wise in investing in our community and our facilities. And we learned that during the pandemic as well, when we were able to distribute laptops, when Wi-Fi was available across our system, thanks to these programs. So thanks to you all for being stewards of it and making sure that with the right level of oversight that Eastside is respecting and building with the trust that our voters and our community have placed in us.
May I suggest that when we have a new building is done, the construction, so we need to have some ribbon cutting and really get the words out, and especially with all of those, member from citizens on committee, because the community might there probably were not aware of it. But if we can do something and ribbon cutting and get the words around, and I think the community will be very appreciated.
Thank you. We're going to move on, but let me first say, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm overly warm in this room and I don't feel enough air moving. And I don't mean by that to turn this into Siberia, but I may not be the only one who is feeling the same thing. Moving on to item 8.03 on approval of waiver of facility use fees per board policy 1330 and board member Lay.
Yes, I request the board to approve and waiver facility use per board policy 1330. On September 10, the community will organize the Children Moon Festival, and the proceed will fundraise for the Makini-Vento homeless student in our district. So I request to have the approval of waiver facility. And I know this is a good project for the community. We want to invite the community to come to YB to see this. Well, some of them probably already saw the student union first time that Associate Superintendent Tom Nguyen has done such a good job. This is the first student union in our district. So I think this is a good event that I asked for a waiver for the facility.
Move for approval.
Moved by Doe,
I'll second.
seconded by
is-
Cortese, just explaining
This is
to,
just the board policy. This is per the board policy.
that's
that
what I
we
was
had.
going to say.
Yeah, yes.
That per the board policy that allows board members to sponsor a fee waiver for one time in a year for some organization or cause, and you're exercising your board prerogative on this motion, on this request. And okay, there are no questions or comments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it passes unanimously. We're going to then go out of order and pick up item number 12.01 on educational services initiatives and priorities for this school year, 2022-2023. Associate Superintendent Teresa Marquez.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, superintendent, superintendent's council, and community. Teresa Marquez, Associate Superintendent for Educational Services. As we begin a new school year, I thought for this year would be important to bring to the board and the community at large the key initiatives and priorities that the Educational Services Department will be focusing on for the 22-23 school year. And so first, just to ground us and to set the stage for the initiatives and the priorities, all of these initiatives and priorities that you will be hearing about this evening are to this end, for us to build equitable communities where all our students are welcomed as they are, as difficult as sometimes I know that may be, where their strengths and areas of growth are not only known, but they're supported, where the adults positively respond to the various needs that our students bring. And I know that's not an easy task as well. And finally, doing those first three things that I've mentioned to be able to have the students engaged in classrooms with assignments, with tasks, with projects that are really going to allow them to develop those skills where they're going to be able to find success beyond us, because there's so much life for them beyond us. We recognize also that in order to build these equitable communities with these initiatives and priorities that you will hear me speak about this evening, it has to be done as a system. We have to look at it from the policy aspect of the work that we do, from removing the barriers and ensuring that all our students have access, and ensuring that those day-to-day practices are in place for us to make sure that we're really working towards building those equitable communities. And so the initiatives and the priorities that you will hear about this evening are really through that lens of a systems response. And of course, we recognize that as we're building equitable communities, as we're responding as a system, that we're really looking to address that whole child. That we can't break the pieces of the kid. They come to us whole, and they come to us with the various needs that they have, with the various assets that they bring. And so it's our obligation to really approach them through the whole child lens, which includes looking at them through their academics, their behavior, and their social emotional needs. Specifically, we recognize that the framework that's going to allow us to approach that whole child is our multi-tier systems of support framework that really looks to ensure that all our diverse learners' needs are being met so that they can attain not only their high school diploma, but a high school diploma that's going to allow them to be able to attend a university if they so choose, enter the workforce if they so choose, with those skills that are outlined within our graduate profile. So our MTSS framework allows us to be able to hold true the equity policy and specifically the definition that you as board members have approved and that we actually have as part of that policy work that allows us to respond as a system. We recognize that the multi-tier systems of support framework, when it looks at all students, all the diverse learners, it's really allowing us to be true and be faithful to that definition of equity, which is one where every student is going to receive what he or she needs. And we know that it's not a one size fits all, but it's to really look at the whole child and really get to the needs of that particular child, which is hard. I want to say it, it is hard. And of course, what's that tangible, right? Because I could speak to you about the whole child. I could speak to you about the skills within the graduate profile, but our community, our parents, our students, you as board members, really want to see what's that tangible aspect of it. And for us, it's right in our backyard, right? San Jose State University that has partnered with us to guarantee students who meet that minimum criteria of A through G course completion with at least a C- or better grade point average, apply, are guaranteed acceptance into a four-year university right in our backyard. And so setting the stage of the building equitable communities through our multi-tier systems of support to ensure they have those skills outlined in the graduate profile, approaching it through the whole child as the whole child is to this end, right? To ensure that they are ready for college and career. And for us, we have that promise for them that we can actually turn into practice. And so how do we do that, right? How do we change that promise into practice? And for us, it's really through the local control accountability plan, which is for us really our roadmap that aligns our goals with our key actions. It has metrics and it has how we allocate our resources and our funding. And so the initiatives and priorities that I'm going to present to you today are in alignment with our LCAP, which I really want to leverage to use as our roadmap for the work that we do. Just as a reminder, our LCAP has 6 goals. The first goal is focused around college and career readiness. Our second goal is around creating learning environments for our students to ensure we increase our graduation rate. We specifically call out the achievement of our English learners so that we can target our services and our support for our English learners. Our fourth goal is around establishing a safe and healthy school culture, in particular, how we respond to behaviors that we see within our students. Obviously, focusing on attendance and chronic absenteeism. If our students aren't coming to school, it's difficult for us to be able to ensure that we provide those services. And finally, a new goal for this year is the achievement of our homeless youth, making sure that our students who are most in need are receiving the services that they need. And so you're going to see the priorities that I present to you divided into 2 categories. One is compliance-based. Like it or not, we have mandates and we have compliance elements that we have to make sure that we adhere to. The second category is the work towards building equitable communities through specifically multi-tier systems of support, right? Getting from that promise of the Eastside Spartan partnership to practice. Okay, so those are the 2 categories that I'm going to share with you today. So we begin with the compliance-based. It wouldn't be a new year if we didn't have another assembly bill, right? And so this year's assembly bill, or one of them I should say, is Assembly Bill 469. And this one's particularly focused around ensuring that school districts across the state of California work with their seniors in completion of their financial aid form and or the CATA, which is the California form for our undocumented students. And so this is a new bill that request for school districts to put in place a plan to ensure that every single senior student that we have in our Eastside schools is going to have access to completing a financial aid form for the California Dream Act application. It's in alignment, obviously, with our goal of college and career readiness. And the one thing that I want to point to that you'll see that I want to bring to the board and the community at large is to look at the progress monitoring metrics for each of these initiatives. In the LCAP, we have those, what I call summative metrics, right? Graduation rate, dropout rate, A through G rate. Those metrics, for the most part, are calculated at the end of a kid's high school career. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring is, in these initiatives that we work from year to year, what are those progress monitoring metrics that we can put in place or that we have to be able to measure and evaluate how it is that we're progressing on this initiative or priority that we have set. And so for the AB 69, we're obviously going to look at the number of 12th grade students that have a completed FAFSA or CADA application, and the number of students who opt out from that. As part of this new assembly bill, we do have to provide a means by which parents are able to opt their students out if they feel that they do not want to submit any one of those applications. The next compliance-based initiative that we have for this year is our federal program monitoring. So because we receive categorical funding such as Title I, Title II, Title IV, we are bound to Title IX regulations. The government, right, our partners in the government, CDE, and the federal government want to make sure that we're ensuring that these needs are being met. And in particular, the needs of our English learners in many cases in terms of the programmatic offerings that we have for them. And so for us, a progress monitoring metric for us is the number of findings that they have. Hopefully it's 0. And we're found compliant in all the various areas, but we recognize that for us, we know that we are holding true to the measures of the federal program monitoring if they have no findings. Additional compliance-based initiatives that we have is our continued work with the Office for Civil Rights, as well as the continued work with our partners at the CELPA, which is our oversight and partnering entity for special education. And obviously the California Department of Education in that aspect. And so we continue to work specifically on updating board policies and administrative regulations as per the requirements that they have set for us, where they want to ensure that our policies are up to date to specifically in these areas for our special education services, as well as our responses to student behavior. And so the metrics for this would be obviously the number of policies and admin regulations that we're able to bring forth to the board for adoption, and their approval of our corrective actions that we take as per the agreements that we have with both those entities. Additionally, we have a number of students who are on 504 plans, which is a function of general education, and it provides an opportunity for students with disabilities not within special ed that ensures that they have the accommodations and modifications that they need to be able to be full participants within the educational and instructional program. And specifically for us, we want to make sure that we have a set process that is adhering to all the regulations as per Section 504, and that there's training available for our 504 coordinators, and then that there's training for the teachers within the general ed as to how to meet the accommodations and modifications for those students that are held to the 504 plans. And then finally, the last compliance-based initiative that we have for this year is a continued agreement with the Office for Civil Rights. And so just a little bit of background, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, is that agreement that we have with the Office for Civil Rights to ensure that we work to eliminate disproportionality in discipline and behavior responses. And so really for us, we're going to look at constant behavior referrals, and that can be done on a day-to-day basis. We're going to look at our suspensions, our expulsions, and the completion of those required actions that they have listed for us as a result of the agreement with the Office for Civil Rights. So those are our compliance-based major initiatives and priorities. Yes,
Questions right now or after?
whenever you'd like.
All right, since I'm talking, I'm just gonna say it.
Mhm.
Yes, so if we go up,
Which one do you want?
the
469.
Assembly bill. So I love that students are going to be getting support, all of our students. A question I have is for our 12th graders that submit opt-out forms. Is there like a process that, or what is the process for how we engage with our students to talk to them about different pathways and different opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, now that we have this year a subject area coordinator for counseling, Heidi Boyd, she's working closely with my team, Kristen King, Marta Guerrero, in developing that process. So we actually started this summer in developing the process for rolling this out. And obviously, our school counselors are going to be the on the ground folks who are going to really be implementing the plan. And so they're receiving training, first of all, to ensure that we all have a common understanding as to the process. But one of the things that we're doing is we're making it, I don't want to say difficult for students to opt out, but we want to make sure that they have all the information that they have to make an informed decision about not completing the FAFSA or the CARA. So counselors are planning student workshops, presentations, parent workshops, presentations in our primary 3 language of English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, so that if they still choose to opt out, it's because they've received information. The California Department of Education sent out their opt-out form that they're requiring school districts to use. We've amended it a little bit to ensure that there's this opportunity for students to have to check that I am opting out even after I've received a informational workshop. And so we're requiring our students
Right.
to receive a workshop before they can actually opt out, so that they're making that informed decision. And so school counselors are going to be working with their government econ teachers, because we know those are the most pure 12th grade classes, to go into those classrooms and make those presentations so that students are well informed about this.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So the next aspect of our priorities are within the work to implement our multi-tier systems of support so that we can build those equitable communities. And there's a lot of overlap within these. So even though I have them parceled out or separated, to just give you some additional information, they're all connected to the overarching work of our multi-tier systems of support. And so the first one is our tier 1 whole child approach, as I mentioned, in setting the stage for this presentation, looking at the academic, social, emotional behavior aspects of the student. So for us, we're really going to look to develop that tier 1 that has clear evidence of what high quality instruction with interventions are, and interventions like in that moment in that classroom, as well as our continued work to create safe and positive learning environments. So we're going to be looking at where is their fidelity? If we make agreements as to what high quality instruction looks like, right? And that's going to be done obviously with the input from teachers who are in the classroom who know what high quality instruction looks like. What are those indicators of high quality instruction? And are we faithful to those agreed upon indicators that we're looking to see in the classroom? Daily attendance, right? If students are engaged and feel welcomed and that they can belong in school, we're going to see a rise in attendance. We're going to see improvement in grades, and we're going to see improvement in behavioral referrals, or a decrease in the behavior referrals. And so those will be some of the progress monitoring metrics that we're looking at as we're working towards our tier 1 whole child approach. Yes.
When we heard from the social workers last spring, they talked about, sort of this awareness that a lot of their work has been focused on tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, and that they wanted to move more toward tier 1. And I assume this category includes that because it's got social emotional on here.
Yes,
So are
absolutely.
we working with our social
Yep,
workers on this?
absolutely, we are. And I'm gonna pull one of the items here to just kind of give you a little bit more information. And so the social workers, yes, they're gonna be working towards more preventative work, right? More school-wide lessons, more school-wide engagement, so that hopefully their referrals go down, that they have to then serve as a tier 2 or a tier 3, right? And so that's the intent. The next element is we're going to continue with our student equity councils. I think it's important to include and elevate that student voice. And so our multi-tier systems of support teachers on special assignment will be leading those teams of students and continuing to work with them in advocacy and project design. at their school sites. Yes.
Teresa, I have a question on that one. So, so what we doing is we will look into the group of a student that have social emotional, then we work with them. But how are you going to do is in terms of elevate student voice and leadership? Are they going to be on the leadership program, or how do they work?
So if you remember last year or this last school year in May, a group of various students from representative schools came and shared their project. And so this is not specific to students who have mental health needs. This is open to students who want to take on a leadership role, not outside of ASB, outside of like your student governing board, outside of the associate student body. This is a group that is going to be trained, is going to participate in workshops so that they feel that they can advocate for themselves and for their peers through the design of a project. I think last year, if we remember, some of the projects were looking at ensuring that there was inclusivity within the ASB groups, right? Looking at ensuring that there was gender neutral restrooms accessible to all students without having to feel categorized or labeled for how a student identified. And so really this is to teach students how to advocate through a project design process.
That's awesome. Thank you.
The other elements that we will continue to look at as part of our MTSS implementation is our priority standards work. You also received a presentation from our subject area coordinators last spring in regards to this. So we will continue with the next element of this. And we're really going to look at what's the fidelity of use to these priority standards. Our subject areas are teachers feeling equipped to be able to really engage in their lesson planning based on these priority standards, and then moving to the next level of unpacking those standards to identify what are the skills that are behind that standard so that teachers understand what's the best approach to take with students to elevate their skills in connection with the graduate profile as well as with the content that they teach. Of course, we continue our focus with our English learner program. At the next board meeting, my Director of Instruction No Services, Marta Guerrero, will come to you and give you a more detailed presentation about our English language learner, which will include recommendations that were provided to us by West Ed, who came in and did a full-on English learner program review for us. Our other elements of the work that we're going to do, of course, and this is a big one, is safe and positive climate and culture. It's part of that tier 1 whole child approach, but I wanted to elevate it in the sense to ensure that we're specifically looking at the work to sustain healthy school cultures where students feel that they belong, where we have positive responses for students, and when students understand what the behavior expectations there are, as well as what the consequences are for not meeting those expectations, but also the acknowledgement for when they are meeting those expectations. And we're going to look at what are those tier 1 activities, social work activities at the tier 1 level that are going to be done across the school sites to really promote this idea of preventative work to increase or improve the feeling of belonging, the feeling of positivity and safety within our school campuses. And so we're looking at school-wide lessons on school expectations, behavior referrals, and obviously the attendance aspect of it. So these are the main initiatives and priorities that we have. So what I want to pull out now, because within each one, there's a lot of subset of work that goes into it. So I want to pull out one of them, which is around safe and positive school climate and culture, just to give you an idea as to what are some of those tangible pieces of work that we're engaging in to meet this bigger aspect of safe and positive school climate and culture. So one of the things that we're doing is really looking and honing in on our supervision plans, right? What happens during those unstructured times, passing periods, after school, before school, during lunch, where are our staff located during these times? Is there staff visibility so that students can see that there's an adult presence there during those unstructured times so that there's that higher visibility? Because we do know in many cases, our students, if they see an adult there supervising and engaging with them, they're less likely to engage in inappropriate behavior. It may still happen, but at least we know that there's that staff visibility where that staff can engage with those students and really remind them of what those behavior expectations are. And this includes also looking at how do we partner with our community-based organizations as part of that supervision plan. The other element of this is really looking at school-wide lessons for how we inform our students. What are those behavior expectations that we want from you, right? When we say we want you to be respectful, what does that mean? What does that look like in the classroom? What does that look like during lunch? What does that look like when I'm standing in line to get my food, right? What is those clear behavior expectations that we want our students to demonstrate? And then how do we acknowledge those when they are meeting those expectations? And then make sure that they're clear on what the responses or those levels of accountability will be for them if they don't meet those expectations. One of the things that I'm super excited to bring to you is we are going to be engaging in what we're calling our care team, which is a coordination of services, where it's going to be the various roles coming together to really look at the needs of students, not only individual student needs, but looking at the pattern of referrals that we're getting to identify gaps that we have as a system or within the school side. So we're gonna look at, based on these referrals that we are getting, is there an issue with vaping? So how do we approach that preventative work for that? Yes, still triaging and looking at the individual student needs, but what are we seeing in terms of gaps that we have, or even what's working? We've gotten less referrals on this. This must be working. How do we continue to work on that particular element? So I'm super excited about being able to have a coordinated care team that's going to really look at, like I said, those referrals that come into the social workers. What used to be known as that social work referral is now going to be a care team referral, which really looks at it from the whole child perspective. Is there academic needs? Is there behavior needs? Or is there social, emotional, and mental health needs? And how do we respond to that? Not only, like I said, individual, but is there something that we're seeing in regards to a pattern? We also need to look, and we understand that, yes, when a student is suspended, they get to come back, right? So what's that re-entry plan for that student to re-engage with that student so that they understand those behavior expectations, but also understand that they're still cared for and they're still loved, and that we're gonna welcome them back so that they can continue to engage with their education. Same thing with our students who are expelled. Once they meet their expulsion agreement or their expulsion requirement, they get to come back, right? That's ed code. They get to come back. And so how do we develop a plan for reentry that's going to be supportive of their needs so that they feel that they can succeed once they're back with us? And the last two pieces in terms of safe and positive school climate and culture is restorative practice professional development. We have a plan this year where we're going to begin with our leadership. We're going to begin with our administrative teams, with our MTSS, TOSAs, and our exclusion specialists, so that at this level, including my leadership team, where we understand what those restorative practices are and what they look like, so that we can better support once we're ready to roll out the professional development across our district, so that we can better support our staff when we do engage in professional development across the system for restorative practices. And then,
Oh,
yes,
sorry. Before you just finish what you're saying, but before you go on.
I'm good before I go on to the next one.
Oh, yeah. What I'm kind of learning that there's a lot of different people bring different interpretations to what they're calling restorative practices. So do we have sort of a underlying philosophy or an underpinning to what?
Yeah, and I
we're
think
calling?
that's why I'm starting with the leadership, because there is different interpretations of what restorative practices are. I think a lot of times restorative practices as a whole is seen as just restorative circles. That's just one aspect of it. There's so many other things, and it's a continuum, right? You can start with affirming statements, and that's a restorative practice, right? So looking at creating a shared understanding and a definition for what we see as restorative practices. What are those key strategies we're going to hone in on? Because we can't do them all, right? But what are those key ones that we want to hone in on? And then that's how we develop our plan for professional development across the system.
Excellent. And, I think for me, from this level, it's almost a shift in a mindset too, right? I think For years in education, we've had sort of a punitive approach, right? Like you do something wrong and now you have, there's a punishment that goes with that, right? As opposed to a learning opportunity or teachable moment, as Ken used to say, and ultimately I love that word restorative because it's about how can you get through whatever you just experienced with the relationships intact, right? Because when something happens, there's harm and we have to acknowledge that, and what actions can we take to mend or maintain those relationships? So,
Yeah,
I
absolutely,
love that
right.
word.
And it's restoring the trust between the system and the family too, right? It's restoring that element of it so that we can continue to provide the services to a student in a trusting manner. And so, yeah, we need to start with our leadership so that they have a clear understanding as to what that is before we then roll it out to the rest of the staff. And then finally, specific to safe and positive school climate and culture is the use of data. Right? We got to be able to use the data to inform our practices, to inform even our narrative, right? Even the narrative of who we are as a district, who our individual schools are in terms of what they provide and what they bring to the school. And so really we want to look at using the already existing data sources that we have, such as SHAPE, which looks at referral data by location, by time, by action, by response, so that we can hone in and pinpoint. Is it happening during lunch? So what do we need to do about how we interact and engage with students during lunch and what supervision it is that we provide? Is it happening before school, right? Is it happening in the bathrooms? Is it happening in the parking lots? So we have clear data that can indicate to us what are the shifts that we need to make within our supervision plan to adjust to make sure that we respond accordingly. And then we have this wonderful I'm going to try to rename it. So here's my first approach at trying to rename our early warning system to a whole child data report, because it really looks at it from a whole child approach. It looks at it from grades, attendance, behavior, and I'm super excited. My wonderful director of assessment accountability, Kristen Keene, is going to try to embed and include social emotional learning indicators, which we can actually pull from the Panorama survey that students already take during the fall and the spring. So really, we're looking at this report as a whole child data report that gives us all these different elements. So just trying that name for size right now, I'm not sure if that's what we're going to call it, but we do want to shift per superintendent's request away from this concept of early warning system, because it's never early enough, right? And this maybe negative connotation of warning system as opposed to approaching it from the whole child.
Took the words out of our mouth. We were just talking about language and the importance of language and how we engage with the people that we work with, that we support in a way that's respectful and embracing of them. So thank you for that. Question on the data. Who is going to be engaging with this data?
Everyone that we can engage with. I think one of the pieces similar to the restorative practices is our leadership. Right. So we want to make sure that at every meeting with our principals, with our APDs, with our APAs, with our teachers on special assignment, we're engaging with data so that then they can take it back to their staff and have that conversation around what's that snapshot? What are we looking like? And again, what are the things that we have to shift? I talked about the coordinated care team, so I'll go ahead and skip that. But essentially, right, it's looking at alignment with our framework as well as looking at it from that whole child approach, right? And basing it on data, right? We have the referrals, and it's an inclusive team that includes social workers, the associate principal, our head counselors, our partners from our community-based organizations, our advisors, our multi-tier system of support TOSA, because again, you're looking at it just not through that singular view of the referral, but as a pattern, so you can identify what are those needs that we have as a school, and where are the gaps, what's working, and how do we pivot where we need to pivot. And then finally, just wanted to give you a snapshot as to what those data look like. Here's the whole child data report, which gives us that alert as to where we need to hone in with which particular group of students or with which individual students, right? So a lot of value in being able to have data for students that is at that level, that looks at their attendance, their behavior, their grades, and then, as I mentioned, adding in that social emotional learning indicator aspect of it. And then to a right, that's just a snapshot of our SHAPE data, which is particularly focused on our behavior data, that at any point on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, You can look at what's a quick pulse check? Where are we? Are we suspending students? What are we suspending them for? What are the referrals that are coming in for? So what is it that's needed to be able to meet those needs so that we can do that preventative work as opposed to always having to react? And so again, I end with just knowing that the priorities that I've brought forth to you today are things that we're going to be focusing on for this particular school year in an effort to truly build to create our equitable communities. So thank you.
I have a question,
Yes.
Board President. This is excellent presentation. I was wondering that the data that you bring here, have we looked back to see what's data last year during the pandemic and would compare with this year to see that how much improvement that we have because the MTSS implementation, we make a lot of progress, but we still continue to monitor to see maybe one day when we have a downfall or whatever the reason, but at least that we can have the number that we continue to monitor and look back and see what trends that our program have been improved and have been implemented to really support our students.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have a number of different metrics, right? Obviously, as I mentioned through the LCAP, we have those kind of summative measures, right? That we can compare from one year to the next, with the caveat that there's been some assembly bills that have, adjusted the graduation requirements and things like that. But the reason why I wanted to bring this to you is so that you can see those, what I'm going to call day-to-day metrics, those progress monitoring metrics that we can hone in on a day-to-day basis, right? To look at even just something as simple as, is the current supervision plan that I have giving me the outcomes that I'm looking for? And how will I know that? Because I have the snapshot of shape to see, right? Are referrals increasing? Are they decreasing? Hey, when we started having staff visibility right near the H building bathrooms, we noticed that those referrals went down from when we didn't have them. So absolutely, we're going to be looking at those day-to-day metrics to really look at the impact of that action on the student outcome. And then the fidelity, I think that's a piece that's been missing for us, is that fidelity to the agreements or the model that we're looking to implement, right? To what extent are all teachers standing at their door? If that's an agreement that's made for improving the school climate, right? Hey, all teachers agree that they're going to do an exit ticket. All right, how do we measure that fidelity?
So we're going to do that like quarterly, or semi-annually, or yearly?
We could do it, I think, as maybe even every grading period, right? Because we have these grades that surface for us every grading period, or we could do it based on whatever agreements are made at the school site. Hey, we're going to look at, did tardies reduce within the next, in the next following month as a result of whatever action was taken.
Absolutely. I have two more questions for you. Does LCAP fund the after-school program? Or we have to go out and find the partnership to fund one of those after-school program?
So the LCAP can fund certain things such as additional tutoring, like if a teacher wanted to take on, a group of students to provide tutoring. It provides for additional support through the counselors. But as you know, we have a partnership with our Goodwill Assets program that has supported for many years our after-school enrichment programs. Mr. Vanderzee?
Yeah, and we're coordinating with them to continue those services. So we're going to make sure that Eastside students get the support that they need.
Awesome. My last question is, you talk about the Spartan Promise. I think that's great. And I see the number of students that graduated and apply and got approved. But my question is, if the student attend college like Evergreen or San Jose City College, after they finish that 2 years, would they still have that guarantee spot at Spartan, or just they have to go through from the beginning?
I'll let Mr. Vanderzee
Yes,
answer that.
to receive the promise, you have to apply by November 30th of November if you're a seniors for that. But the truth is, there are wonderful transfer programs with San Jose City and Evergreen. So if you can complete your degree there, work to your degree there, there are wonderful opportunities. And many times students leapfrog straight into the UC system, but also San Jose State. So those opportunities are available to them. But like I said, the opportunity to go to complete a 4-year school degree is available to them, but through a different means, different path.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Can I just say something that I love that Teresa put into this presentation is that data point on the bottom right. Because we talked a lot about narrative and looking at data to see what is our actual issue and how can we respond and are we built to respond. And this just of all the things she's talked about, like in getting these teams, these care teams, coordinating adult responses toward equity, and all these great, this focused attention on students. And then what can we do across the board? If you look at that pyramid, you'll see there on the bottom, it's green, right? And it says 99.9. And what that means is essentially that of all our 99.9% of our students that are getting referrals, are getting one. And if that referral got the right response so that student just got the one referral, my bad, I corrected the relationship with the teacher because I shouldn't have said that. That wasn't right. If we can keep it at 1, that's what we want. But if you look at the next band there in the middle is students who've received 2 to 5. And the percentage of that right now is 0.1 in our system. So we talk about, hey, we really got some issues to address. Right now, that's 27 students we need to zero in. This is East Side Data.
Yes, this is the entire district.
So when we
this
start
year so
talking
far,
about
yes.
really getting those care teams zeroing in, it's not that they've got to zero in on 1,000 students. This data allows us to really see what are those numbers? Who are the students we really want to zero in on? Probably not the group of 99 that got the referral, learned the lesson, made the improvements, right? It's that we now have a clear sense of, hey, this is the group of students we really got to put that love in. And so this kind of data analysis and the coordination that they're doing really allows us to figure out exactly when, where, and with whom to put those tier 2 resources on. So thanks for putting that on there, because I think it's knowing those type of things that allow us to address the issue just much more strategically and with a clear picture of where our issues really are and what scale and scope.
You know, we almost need 2 different words for data, because sometimes you look at data, it's like statistics, right? But this is data that's like action. Like this is where do I put my energy today, right?
Yep.
So I love that.
Thank you for this report, Educational Services Initiatives and Priorities. Oh, there's a comment.
I just want to say this is really responsive to the needs that we saw leaving last year. And so I want to acknowledge that it is very clear that a lot of detail and thought went into this. So thank you for that. I also know our schools are going to be coming and presenting to us. So I'm excited to hear from them, to hear how they're thinking about the data, and just to see how we're thinking about it as a whole and thinking about it ongoing, because it's important. It informs every single action that we take, right? And so I'm just feeling a lot of gratitude for that. So thank you. Thank you for the intention.
Every time I hear one of these reports from you, Ms. Marquez, and from the superintendent, I just keep beaming with pride at really the caliber of leadership that we are blessed with and what we're developing here in this district that is so informed by you being in the trenches in our community over the years and really understanding the opportunities, the nuances, the kind of distinctions that need, even renaming early warning systems to whole child, whole child data.
Data report.
There's tone, there's principles, there's strategies, there's a whole framework that's in motion here. And I think somebody ought to be, making sure that we can report a case study for system transformation, how it was achieved step by step, because it'll be instructive to other communities, other districts. But congratulations on the work that is being done. I am so proud of us,
Yeah,
of you,
thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to close that this work will not be done. It will not be done in isolation, and it hasn't been done in isolation. It'll be done in collaboration with our various educational partners, which include our staff, our parents, and our students. So thank you.
Thank you. And that was item 12.01, Educational Services Initiatives and Priorities, which we took out of order under section 8 of the agenda. And we're going to proceed from section 8 to section 9. And we have no public hearings under section 9. So we proceed to section 10, public members who wish to address the board. Are there any requests?
Before we do so, thank you, Mr. Rare, for wanting to trademark this good stuff. Awesome to hear that. But secondly, just to advise the group that Associate Superintendent Marquez will be exiting right now because she's going to meet with the District 8 Roundtable and share with them the Spartan East Side Promise and make sure that everybody over there in District 8 is aware about it and working towards that outcome.
Okay. And the District 8 Roundtable is a citizen group in City Council District 8, and they really stay on top of community activities, and this will be valuable, very valuable group for Associate Superintendent Marquez to be speaking to about our work with the East Side Promise. We wish you well in that. Under item 10, section 10 of the agenda, are there any requests for public members who wish to address the board?
We have no public comment.
Okay, Mr. Superintendent, anybody on your end? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item 11.01 regarding the update on novel coronavirus. Yeah.
Thank you very
Update.
much. Tonight, we'll be looking at our dashboard and our current data, and we always make sure that we message this out to our community in our roundup. Just a reminder of our safety measures in relationship to this. Just a reminder, just so all people aware of our field trip protocols, if they're planning that, and our next steps. Truthfully though, tonight we are talking about COVID, but we'll look at the numbers and we'll see that they are dropping, which is great in our area. And we'll just have to kind of end the night or start with this one. Remember, for people to take care of themselves in the next couple of days with heat. Please make sure that we hydrate, and our staff, I'm sure our PE staff and our coaches will make sure that we're mindful of that. But just make sure that our community is mindful of the heat and take care of those you love. And let's talk about what we're seeing in our community right now with our COVID data. So this was our data the last time we met as of August 18th. We are 7-day, remember the county uses the 7-day rolling average, and that was at 563, again dropping. And as of yesterday, we're at 405. So within a 2-week period, our 7-day rolling average dropped. Someone do the math for me there, but over 150. So great, super great. The next one is harder to talk about, but the data is still moving in the right direction. This is one of the data points that the county continues to look at, and that is deaths that they see related caused by COVID. And so this again is not an average. This is cumulative since 2020. And we can see that the last time we met, our number was at 2,416. We're currently at 2,445. So if you look at this last bar, you can see that our death rate, oh, can you not see that? Let me see if I can move it up. Our death rate is dropping steadily and pretty significantly. Last time we presented, we saw a data anomaly that our booster percentage was dropping due to the fact that more people had gotten vaccinated, but not the booster yet. And so in the last 2 weeks, look at this, look at the purple number now, 68.9. Hey, it's actually increased because those that had recently been vaccinated then have got the subsequent booster. So both the vaccination for all ages and our booster population percentage within our county are steadily increasing. But what's it look like here in the east side? Last time this was positive cases updated with our new numbers of staff and students. Thank you, Associate Superintendent Wynn and HR for making those adjustments. And so we were at 34 positive cases for staff, 58 for students, and now it's currently 20 for staff and 51 for students. So our numbers are going in the right direction. We continue to have masks and PPE available. There are tests available. We still require the vaccination for staff. It is still not required for students. We are, the new notifications is we do have to notify the county if any one of our sites or institutions as a site as a whole has a higher than a 5% positivity over a 10-day period, then we have to report, otherwise not. And we still encourage folks to seek out the vaccinations and the boosters, and we have that information here, and we'll conclude it in our board summaries that we send out. As we do know that sometimes mental health and wellness supports sometimes are tied to this. And once again, if you would like to submit an anonymous referral to have someone reach out to you or to a fellow student or someone you know, that anonymous reporting feature link is also there. Our field trips, overnight is allowed if you test before and back, out of state, and we've got a few student groups that are even looking at some out of country experiences. Once again, we look for the COVID levels to be equal or lower. They test before they go, they test when they come back, and they test 3 days after coming back. Our next steps have been our last steps. We'll continue to make testing available for staff and students. We'll make sure that we secure all the personal protective equipment and testing supplies, and we'll just continue to monitor and update our practices and our procedures and what we provide as appropriate. Action required for our last resolution covers September 15th, so we'll be bringing that to the September 15th.
Moving on, we've already taken care of section 12 of the agenda. Moving on to item section 13.01, approved contracts for professional services over 25,000, a routine item.
This is pretty standard. This is the list of contracts associated with that.
Need a motion?
Move for approval.
A second. Oh. give it to
Moved
Brian.
by moved by Chavez and seconded by Doe. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and it passes unanimously. 13.02, resolution for authorized signatures.
Simply put, this is a list of employees that are now, if you approve that, we are able to sign to complete agreements and purchases and things of that nature. It's the officials.
I'll second.
Moved by Doe and seconded by Cortese. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes unanimously. Section 14.01, approving provisional permit requests for certificated employees.
Second.
Who moved it? Okay, moved by Lay, seconded by Doe. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and it passes unanimously. 14.02, approving variable term waiver request for certificated.
Move to approve.
Moved by Cortese, second by Doe. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, abstentions, it passes unanimously. 15.01, section 15 of the agenda on approving bond capital project contracts over $50,000.
Move to approve.
Moved by Cortese, second by Doe. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes unanimously. We're on to the consent calendar. Either pull up
Move.
an item or
Move to approve the
a
consent
motion to
calendar.
approve. Okay, moved by Cortese, seconded by Doe to approve the consent calendar. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes unanimously. Moving right along, we're on to item 21. And there are no items under 21.01. Moving on to item section 22.01, an opportunity for the board members to request items on future agendas.
I don't know if this is something like independent or if it could be added to a report or a presentation that we're thinking, but our parent liaisons and the work that we're doing with our parent engagement.
Yeah, so I defer to you, Mr. Vanderzee, to determine how that we get that information.
Same.
And we'll have that coming from both of you, a joint request. How about that?
Yes.
And item 22.02 is simply tracking for the public.
I have a
record.
request.
Okay, go ahead.
I actually have two requests. Well, one is probably something you'll do anyway. But I really enjoyed hearing from the equity councils last spring about their projects. So I assume you're going to do that again, but just in case you don't, I would like to just say, I'd love to see that again.
We'll do that, and we'll be mindful of the amount of time we use during the questioning portion of that.
Okay, very good.
presentation.
Okay, my other request is, and this is not necessarily not necessarily a request or a presentation. It could be just a report. But I'm aware that California has said that in 2035, they will no longer permit the sale of combustion engine vehicles. And that's not very long from now. So I'm just wondering what our plan is around EV charging stations for employees and students. And if we, just what our thinking is about it, like if like we don't have a plan, do we have a plan to have a plan? You know, I mean, just kind of where are we at with that?
Our plan is to develop a plan currently.
Yes, Member Lai.
I was wondering about some of the bond project as well as some construction project in Eastside. I want to see if we have any plan like for solar as well as water conservative, because I know that we'll be in a drought, condition soon, and we're gonna look overall from the whole district. We have a lot of construction, we have a lot of good program, but in terms of, and also I know that we had the solar program before, but we've done with that. But are we going to look the next project or anything that happened, in our district, so we can utilize, the electricity and as well as the sun, the solar, and helping our facility?
Yeah, so a lot of the movement that we made in water conservation, as Dr. Schimmel mentioned earlier, was through the use of turf fields. And well, again, those require like every number of years for those to revitalize those. And so there'll be expense with that. So we'll be better able to develop a plan, a strategic plan, and thinking of that once we have information from November. And then we'll be able to think out projects and where we want to go in terms, and with an eye for sustainability. And so we'll know more in December how much we'll be able to aggressively plan for that, or to have to look at how we can use existing.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on from item 22.02. Actually got confused whether we were still on 22.01, but in any event, 22.02 just simply tracks prior requests and their status. We're going to move on to the conclusion of the board meeting, section 23, comments by members of the board. I'm going to start to my left with Trustee Doe. Okay, and then Vice President Chavez.
Yes, so it is the first day of September. This is Latino Heritage Month. So happy Latino Heritage Month this whole month. I am going to be co-hosting an event honoring some leaders in our community alongside Assembly Member Alex Lee. And there are a few high schools in Eastside that are within Assembly District 25, one of them being Independence High School. So I'm really excited that we're gonna be recognizing Guadalupe Alvarez. She's been a teacher for over 20 years and does a lot of amazing work in our district. So this is an invitation for everybody to join us. It's going to be at Taqueria Las Vegas in Milpitas. And so I'll send the information to you, Glenn, so that you can share it out with folks, because we want to celebrate our teachers. They're doing amazing work here. And so this is just one great opportunity to do that.
Okay, nothing for Pat. for
Yeah, I
Festival
want to
Desi-
thank you, Board Member Lorena Chavez, to bringing up Latino Heritage Month. And I think that's the wonderful things that we need to celebrate it, the heritage. And I know that I want to send invitation to all East Side community, teachers, staff, students to join the Moon Festival on September 10. One thing is I'm very proud that the younger generation has stepped up to carry the torch and also coordinate this year. And one of the student is one of student senior from Santa Teresa, Shiva Pham. One alumni from Independence is Jenny Dangan Joe. So that's one thing is I'm very proud of our student. So thank you.
My comment will be brief. I do want to acknowledge that Spotlight, San Jose Spotlight news service has now an education reporter on the beat, Lone and Pham, who has been attending our meeting all night tonight. And so we want to acknowledge San Jose Spotlight and the work of reporter Lone and Pham, and welcome your interest in reporting really to the community. There will be opportunities, and she has said to me that she welcomes any suggestions on the part of our district leadership for stories that she might pursue. And so just want us all to be aware. We now have a reporter at all of our meetings, okay? And the other is that tragically I will be adjourning the meeting tonight in memory of a student of ours who was killed in a violent incident this past weekend. I'll say more as we adjourn the meeting. But at this point, I'm going to pass it over to the superintendent for his comments.
Thank you for that, and thank you for structuring time for us to recognize that student. I do want to recognize that we're entering into a 3-day weekend that really highlights the work and effort that people put in. And our staff has done amazing work in this first week of school of welcoming students, opening it up to them. The sense of community has been really high. And our students have a year under their belt, and they understand better what it is to be a member of a community and how good it is to be part of a community that is for them. And so when we talk about the Spartan Eastside Promise, everywhere I go, people are starting to run away from me, like, Vanders, you're gonna start talking about the Spartan Eastside Promise. Yep. Because I just think not every student might take advantage of it, but every student should know about it. Right? There's a lot of different ways for post-high school success, but let's make sure they know this one because it's so accessible and it's doable. And I met with a group of attendance secretaries today because we were talking about the promise. I said, you run into everybody. How could you just get the word about the promise without adding to your workload? And they discussed for a little bit, and someone just said, we need to add just part of our emails that we send out for every absence or tardy. Just, hey, come be here on time and be about the promise. If you want to learn about the promise, here's the link. Like, brilliant, right? So really in making this, in getting more of our students to know about it, I just want to recognize what staff has done. And knowing that we've got weeks when we come back on Tuesday till the end of the grading period. Hey, if you know that you've got a student or you're an advisor and you know the student's been struggling in the class, let them know the end of the 6-week marking period's coming. Don't give away a grade. You don't have to do anything different, but just let them know, hey, what work would you have to put in to get that grade to be a C? And let's just do that. Just ways that we can inform kids that they're about the promise, be about the work without having to add tremendously to people's workload. So that's just with all that people have done, it's a small ask that I think could make a difference for the lives of our students. And I thank our staff in advance for doing that.
Thank you. Board meeting evaluation and comments.
Yeah, again, I think when we focus our meeting on student achievement, that's a good meeting. And I just really loved Associate Superintendent Marquez's presentation tonight because it just makes me feel like we're really that's really where our focus and our heart is as a district.
Thank you. Under report from closed session actions, there were no actions to report.
There are no actions to report,
Actions
correct?
to report. As we adjourn the meeting, I want to again say that there was a tragic incident this past weekend in which one of our students lost his life in a violent confrontation. He spent most of his years, freshman, sophomore, most of his junior year at Evergreen Valley High School. Really, I went to the spontaneous candlelight vigil that was held at the site of where he was killed on Quimby Road. And there was an outpouring from students from Evergreen Valley High School mostly who knew him. He also happened to be a friend of my sister's son, Marcos, who went to Evergreen Valley High School. And he used to visit frequently at the home of my sister and their home, my brother, my nephew. So it really hit home in our family, the tragedy of this matter. And so extending our condolences to the family and to all of those who were affected. Tonight's meeting is being adjourned in honor of, in the memory of the student, Sunny Suy, I believe you pronounce it, S-U-Y. And we do remember you, and we do remember and hold in our hearts the Suy family and all of those who cared for Sunny Suy. So this meeting stands adjourned in memory of this student. Meeting is adjourned.